Hey guys, so today is the first day that I'm podcasting. I don't even have a
Woo!
name. Yeah, I don't even have a name for my podcast. Kenner, who's my guest today, Kenner French, actually inspired me to start a podcast. I was a guest on his podcast as a marketing consultant for a lot of his clients, and I had a lot of fun. And I think what we both discussed, Kenner and I, is what everybody knows: traditional media is dead, podcasting's kind of in. And I'm a marketer, and I think for many years I didn't think I needed a podcast, but I found that I've been left behind. I've been a guest on tons of podcasts, a lot of my friends' podcasts. So I want to keep it as broad as possible, and I want to be quiet for a second so I can introduce Kenner. Uh, so today's episode's about money tips, how people can better manage their money, future trends, and Kenner's been a great mentor to me in all regards. I've worked with him in the past. So without further ado, Kenner, who are you? Why should people listen to you?
Why should people listen to me? Well, because I'm friends with you, first of all.
Great
Wow,
reason.
that's a great introduction. I'm glad. I'm so glad we're doing this because there are so many benefits to doing a podcast. It's unbelievable. I years ago, and I'll explain who I am in a little bit. By the way, I did a little bit of a podcast for a year and a half, and I forgot the benefits. I got lazy, and I stopped doing it, and I got lazy, and then now I'm back on the kick, and man, it just now my eyes are reopened to how beneficial it is. So for any of your viewers or listeners out there who are thinking about doing a podcast, if you want to grow your business, if you want to get your voice out there, you should be doing a podcast, either audio or visual. Anyway, yep, my name's Kenneth French. VastSolutionsGroup.com is the company that I run. I've been running it since 2006. It's been around since 1969. We basically do tax, finance, and artificial intelligence for entrepreneurs, really smaller entrepreneurs, one or two, maybe even up to 5 employees. I've been doing it and I'm loving it. I was retired for 10 years, or semi-retired for 10 years, working maybe an hour or two a week, and here I am killing it. And back in love with business because artificial intelligence has been my thing for really since 2000, well, really 2010. I really started our own model in 2018, but now I'm re-energized and I'm killing it, loving it, and back in the workforce, and hopefully going to carry on for some time because I'm re-energized because of what's going on with artificial intelligence and how it's helping business nowadays.
Yeah, that's interesting. I actually totally forgot you retired for 10 years. Must be nice, right?
Yeah, well, I worked hard. I worked hard leading up to that, and
Yeah, no,
now,
Kenner's worked extremely hard. I was introduced to him by a friend, Neil, who many of you probably know. Um, and he's given me invaluable advice when it comes to how to manage my business, how to manage my finances, even as an individual who doesn't own a business, and things to do in the future, which we could get into later. But Kenner also is very humble. He didn't talk about where he went to school. He's gone to a lot of Ivy League schools. He's gone to Harvard. And he's a pretty big deal in the Seattle entrepreneur community. He knows a lot of mutual friends, and there's a lot of people whose money he manages of whom he can't tell me. So I'll just leave it at that, right?
thank you. You're so kind. I mean, if hard work does pay off, it really does pay off. And obviously, I think you're going to reap the rewards now that you're putting together a podcast. And I know you know a lot of people. You're going to be bringing in unbelievably awesome guests, and this thing's going to blow up. I'm positive of that.
Yeah. Hey, you also helped me set up my podcast studio with all my interests. So, I mean, that was really fun to do over the last couple of weeks. And now that I'm actually doing the podcasting, it is fun, but it's way more fun to put together uh, all the goodies. So, if anybody is looking forward to starting a podcast, just know that buying all the stuff, you could buy it really lean, like I did. It's really fun setting it up. It's like setting up a whole new apartment or something, right? Um, so I don't get into it. So Kenner, can you get into a little more detail on what your solution provides? And then we could kind of get into a broader spectrum for uh, audiences with, like I mentioned, with businesses and without businesses.
Yeah. So what do we provide? We provide really solutions for people who are paying too much in taxes, who are overpaying. And people don't realize that the government doesn't want you to overpay in your taxes. And we luckily have been doing a lot of research over the years. We've figured out how to employ our AI, or artificial intelligence system or model we call Einstein. It's helped us to help lower taxes for entrepreneurs, legally, ethically, and morally, by the way. So everything we do is based on that. Number one. Then number two, we also will help clients with their finances. And it can be usually an entrepreneur who, is struggling. They're spending so much time in their business. They don't want to spend it on taxes. They don't want to spend it on managing money. So we'll help them manage the money as a result of usually the tax savings that we provide. We have offices in every state, affiliate offices in every state. And yeah, as you mentioned, I'm in Washington State, and we literally have clients all over the world. We also have just started a new community, something that you're going to end up starting, I think, something similar called the Vast Vault, where people can enter that community. It's only now $199 a month. We have over 500 people in it, and it's filled with resources to help business owners. Some who might want to do their own money management or want to do some of the things that we do as far as mitigating taxes. So, that's going to be a big push for us here going forward. But kind of in a nutshell, tax, finance, and artificial intelligence to lower tax liability to help entrepreneurs hopefully spend more time with their family and do what it is they enjoy versus doing tax management, money management, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, it's funny. One of the first conversations I had with Kenner was I was introduced to him, and I actually thought a lot of his services were out of my league. I thought he dealt with, guys way over my head and big shots, which he does. But he also but he also deals with like ordinary people like me and a lot of my audience, right? And he just was a repository of great intel, right? So I'm a photographer. I think a lot of my audience who I might share this with would find value in a lot of the things that he taught me, specifically how I can write off taxes as a photographer. So I've always had a business. I've been in the biz for 12, no, 13 years with my own agency, and now I work full time as a marketer, but I've hopped in and out. And my hobby is photography. I made pretty much zero in my career. Like if you look at the grand scheme, like zero in terms of profit, right? I spend more taking photos than I do selling photos. And that's fine. It's my hobby. And I think a lot of photographers who are my friends feel the same way. But I think a lot of other people who've gotten into photography recently see it not only as their passion, but as an opportunity to make money, right? So they started off with the business and then they're doing photography. And Kenner, you actually gave me some great advice on how I can write off things and what I can write off as a business owner by tagging on my photography. So maybe you want to like expand on that. I know a lot of my audience is, photographers and like people who want to start their own businesses, like
Yeah.
steps they can do right away in
By the
2025.
way, talk about modest. You sure do downplay your success. Obviously, I mean, part of the reason we are buddies, you give me so many good ideas as far as marketing goes. I mean, it's unbelievable some of the things we've exchanged as far as information you've helped us to expand our business. So don't downplay yourself too much. But yeah, for someone who might be a W-2 employee, and there's only so many ways you can lower your taxes if you are a W-2 employee. By the way, number one. Number two, let's say you have a passion, either you're thinking about starting a business or again, you're a W-2 employee and you want to start doing something kind of on the side to bring in revenue to maybe replace some income, give you some Christmas or holiday dough, or maybe you do just want to leave your business, right? So let's say you're working at Microsoft as an example, full time, and then you want to take some pictures and maybe market those pictures on a website as an example. Let's say you live in Seattle as an example and you say, I want to take some pictures of the fauna in Florida as an example, and you want to market those pictures, that media on a website, on your website as an example. Hey, you're probably going to have to, well, not drive. Well, even if you drive, you can get a deduction on that. But let's say you fly. Is the flight deductible? Are you helping your business to grow because you're going to be taking the pictures in Florida, even though you live in Seattle? Well, yeah, generally speaking, it's deductible. What about your hotel? Is it deductible? Well, remember, you're going to be hopefully making your business bigger, right? Even though you're just going to Florida to take those pictures, and putting them on a website. So yeah, that's deductible. What else is deductible? Maybe even the camera. Probably the camera's deductible. So a lot of the things that go into that trip, again from Seattle all the way to Florida, would be deductible. So what does that mean? The government's basically paying you to, well, build a business. They give you, generally speaking, a percentage of the overall spend. Let's say the camera spend that really kind of, to a certain extent, goes in your own pocket. So we tell a lot of people if they want to get a side gig, again, if they're a Microsoft employee, they want to get a side gig, probably makes sense to do something like that. And the government's giving you, truly giving you money to make that trip, to hopefully market, and who knows, maybe make a lot of money. But even if you don't, well, hey, it was worth that shot. And then also, again, the government gave you money for that trip and that endeavor and several other endeavors and things I haven't mentioned, by the way.
Yeah, it took me years to understand this. I've had my business since 2012. Um, and I've also been involved in photography since 2012, and I travel far and wide. It's my hobby. Everybody who's probably watching this right now knows that I travel everywhere, and it makes me happy, right? I didn't know about this truly until maybe like 7 years ago. Like I have a tax guy and he'd deduct things, but now I'm like looking at it with more scrutiny, obviously calling Kenner every now and then. And there's just so many solutions and opportunities to not only grow your business but find ways to reduce your tax burden in an ethical way, as I mentioned. Um, and I think this is only going to expand. I think people are going to become more aware, not only because of uh, podcasts spreading, you know, great intelligence and intel on how to minimize your tax burden, but also AI. And maybe you want to get into how AI is not only helping people with their taxes, but finance and investment in general.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't know all the applications, and they hear AI, and just like me, they're terrified. I watched Terminator 2, Terminator 1, Judgment Day. I watch everything, and it's just some dystopian future, which yeah, we should all be scared of. But there's also great applications. And I think whenever I get really dystopian, which I often do, Kenner kind of like takes me back 5 steps and says, don't think of all the doom and gloom. It's not there yet, and hopefully it doesn't get there.
Yeah, hopefully it doesn't get there. As you said, yet. But yeah, basically, artificial intelligence, we've been reaping the rewards of our endeavor going down that street, for a while. There's no way we would have grown to the extent we are now, nationwide firm. But if it weren't for artificial intelligence. But what I would say is, sure, it is scary. It's a big thing, right? Artificial intelligence, big term. But really, all you have to do is open an account. I know it sounds crazy. Open an account at one of the AI companies or large language model companies. I'll name a few. ChatGPT, or actually, OpenAI has a model, if you will, called ChatGPT. Google, we've all heard of Google, it has a model named Gemini. It's the computer's not going to yell at you. The software's not going to yell at you. Open an account. Usually they're free. Just play around with it. Have that system teach you whatever it is you want to learn. If you want to take baby steps, what is artificial intelligence? It will help you to learn the system. You don't have to make it any more complicated than it is. Number one. Number two, why have we used artificial intelligence? How have we succeeded by using it? Well, we did the exact same thing. We started using it back in 2010 to try to figure out how it's going to help our clients. And what we found was the result was it could help us more proactively, again, proactively lower taxes for clients. And that's exactly what we want. The model basically said, and we call it Einstein, the model basically said, well, for you to lower tax liability for entrepreneurs, you got to prognosticate or guess going forward ways to lower tax liability. So we basically do it this way. Most CPAs, tax providers, drive down the road, they look in their rearview mirror, and they say, well, your tax liability is, well, April 15th, because they're looking backwards, it's X on April 15th. What we have decided to do is instead of driving down the road looking in the rearview mirror, we look forward. We look forward to see what's oncoming, right? So by doing so, we can do hopefully whatever we can to mitigate or lower the taxes. And without artificial intelligence, without our model Einstein, we never would have been able to do that. Now, it doesn't only help in taxes, but it can help in social media posts, as an example. It can analyze the marketplace. It could analyze competitors. There are so many things that artificial intelligence could do, hopefully in a good way versus a bad way, that it will, if you're not using artificial intelligence in some way, who's using it, someone's probably going to be able to take money out of your pocket, take market share out of your hands. It's going to get scary if you're not using artificial intelligence, more so than if you were to try to use artificial intelligence and be scared. I would say, without a doubt, just give it a shot. You'll be happy that you did.
Yeah, I've started incorporating into my Blogging, actually. So
Yeah.
I have a photography blog and I have a wellness blog, both of which rank really well for a lot
Mm.
of key phrases. My wellness blog, Zenful Spirit, started it way back when I was not even really meditating. It was more performative. Now I'm actually like really into meditation and yoga, so much so that I think I tore my rotator cuff doing a downward dog last week. No joke. I have like a bruise. I need to like take it easy. Um, but that's all to say. I'm into wellness, right? Always have been, and I have a blog, and it's ranked traditionally, and it continues to rank even through all these iterations of AI and Google search, kind of changing their algo. But I haven't blogged in over a year. Every year, at the start of every year, I write a few blogs and I say I'm gonna blog a lot this year, and I don't. So all my content that's ranking and the traffic coming is from years past that's still ranking. Um, so this year, I kind of like told myself, hey, find a way to use AI in such a way that it's still your content, but it makes things easier. So for images, instead of sourcing them on Google or using my photography images, which don't always align with wellness, my landscape, I go on ChatGPT and I create images that look photorealistic. Um, Instead of writing from scratch, I have an outline and I pump it into ChatGPT and then I clean it up. And I'll talk about this on another episode, specifically with Neil. He's going to be on the podcast. But um, ChatGPT, utilizing ChatGPT is not going to hurt your Google search rankings, and a lot of people were thinking that would be the case. All it's going to do is I think people are sophisticated enough to know if an article was written by GPT or if it had some personal touch to it. So Google is going to see how well an article does based on people's reactions to an article, right? So I think a lot of people were scared to use ChatGPT because they thought it would hurt their search rankings, or for instance, in investing, maybe it would like screw up an algo that would actually make you pay more for taxes. But that's not the case because there's humans, and this is where it's important to draw the distinction. There's humans that are necessary to run these models. It's not just a computer doing everything. It's like going to a doctor's office. I was actually talking to a family friend the other day. I need to get blood work done this year. I always put it off, as in like it's been like 5 years. But we were talking about how it works, and basically you take a blood sample test and then there's a chart with all these graphs, and you need a doctor to read that. So we're never going to get to a point where there won't be a doctor that needs to read that and analyze it. A computer could tell you, oh, you might have this or that, but still need that human touch, much like doing your taxes, right? Or writing an article and posting it. You need that human touch, and I think you need to be behind that human touch while using AI to not get left behind, right?
I totally agree with that. Question for you.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned something I think is pretty important. Well, I think it's important to still market or still be able to get found by Google. But I also think now it's important to get found, if you will, found by ChatGPT, because that's going to be a good a good lead generation tool going forward, as Google takes maybe a little bit of a dip as far as how many people are going to Google as an example
Mm-hmm.
for search versus ChatGPT or who knows, or or Meta or what have you. I think that opens the marketplace a little bit, and I would think that someone in your field would be able to kind of market to the people who should be utilizing, instead of SEO, AEO, ask engine optimization. What are your thoughts on that, by the way?
Yeah, we actually talked about that on your episode. I mean, on
Yeah.
your podcast. I think the data is not really out on how much Google is going to lose in traffic share.
Mm-hmm.
All the sites I run and all the analytics I have access to haven't really seen a dip associated with people using ChatGPT more. But that's actually a very good point and a valid question to ask in terms of, yeah, as more people rely less on Google and get their answers from ChatGPT, how do you even market your business or utilize ChatGPT to get people into your business? But I think at the same time, they're sourcing from all the search engines. ChatGPT is not its own engine. People like it. You get what I'm saying? Like they're sourcing from all the other search engines and everything on the web. So I don't know. It's a tricky one. I think we need data to kind of support that. I'm also very confused, like just trying to conceptualize like how that even would work. Like they're sourcing from everywhere on the internet. Google's a place where they're ranking things based on that as a search, but engine, but then ChatGPT is ultimately a search engine, but it's just pumping out one response to a query as opposed to 15 that you get to choose from. So I think ChatGPT can be equated to like saying uh you need someone to deliver you some oranges, and they pick whatever orange they want and they drop it off your house, as opposed to going to like Whole Foods and having as many oranges and being able to see what you want and pick from it. And I think if Chat GPT wants to continue to evolve, it needs to give you an opportunity to have more than one answer to what it's pumping out. Because
Yeah.
yeah, I didn't think about that. Maybe I should ask Neil on the next episode. But um, yeah, when I go to ChatGPT and I ask for something, it just tells me something that's the law, that's definitive based on it. And if I disagree, then I have to ask again.
Right.
Right? It's like having a conversation with someone. You're not getting variety. You're not getting differing opinions, which I think is also scary.
Yeah.
Um,
Because he's giving one opinion. I agree. But at the same time, I don't want to sift through Google, not to rip on Google, but I don't want to sift through Google's 15 suggestions of different apples or
yeah,
different oranges. I like going to one place, and that kind of based on the input I provided and all the information that's been provided based on whatever, all the years the internet's been put together, it just kicks out one answer. But what I would also say is if I'm a company, I want to be the one that ChatGPT is pulling from providing an answer to the person who's done the query or the prompt. So
yeah,
what I would say to that is I would think as a business owner, like here, I'll just give an example. What we're doing is we're because we have all the meta tags and all that stuff on our website at
yeah,
vastsolutionsgroup.com. But now what we're also doing is we're doing a huge frequently answered questions and a Q&A thing. And that's basically what the AEO is. It's searching for one answer to a query, and it's more textual versus meta and tags. So our hope is, well, they're going to pull for, for, for our market share to give us even a bigger market share as a result of the fact that we're putting, you FAQs and question and answers to the people's questions. That's ultimately what we're trying to do. We'll see if it works. If it doesn't, it's worth a shot. I think it probably will work, but you just never know. And I don't know if Google will ever be all the way gone and dormant, but at least if there is some market share to be taken because of the large language models like ChatGPT, we want to be getting some market share.
yeah, yeah. I'm listening to everything you're saying, but also just thinking about that question you posed, and my mind's kind of racing. It's like, what if I'm looking for the best restaurant in Los Angeles where I live? For like I'm feeling ramen noodles lately, right? And I asked ChatGPT like what what's the best ramen place? They give me 5 places. But like I can't read the reviews. I can't like get really nitty-gritty into like what's going on. Um and I guess the question to you is like for Einstein, like when you're putting together everything you need to do for like a specific client, right? And you're pumping all the numbers in and it's pumping out an answer based on AI. Does it give you variations on different ways to minimize tax burden? Yeah.
That's a really good question. Yeah, the answer to that is yes. And what really they call it prompt engineering now, I guess, but the information that goes into the model that is really supplied by us really is really important because if we're not putting in good information, what's kicked out is going to be bad information, right? So it's not going to help us to help the end user client. So that's where the real massaging, the creativity occurs. But what I would also say is the end result usually is better than what a normal tax professional would have come out with. I mean, normal tax professional would just say, here's your tax liability. They just do the tax forms and that's it. We just try to be more proactive than the typical group.
And it's probably learning from you. So as you said,
Right.
and I want to highlight you're moral, ethical, and you're doing things the right way. It's learning that you're that way too. So it's going to continually pump out results that are in that vein. Whereas if some nefarious actor started using Einstein and was like trying to do really shady stuff, then it would it pump out that, or would it have like
Oh,
roadblocks and stops?
as an example, let's say someone's trying to do an act, whatever that act is, and it shows we can even say, okay, you have a 10% chance of getting audited based on that act, or you have a 40%. Yes, it will get that specific. So, yeah, if someone wants to really push the envelope and say, oh, I don't care about my audit risk, it will give you parameters to dictate to do a certain action and not, and even though you don't care about getting audited.
And this goes back to the point where you need prompt engineers, you need
Right.
sophisticated people in marketing, in healthcare, in finance to like oversee this because it's not going to run rampant. It's not going to take over and you know take over the IRS, but it could prompt some things that are not wanted, just like Google search results. I could search for something, or sorry, two steps back. I could go on ChatGPT and ask her something, and it gives me something that's totally off base.
You're totally right.
Yeah,
Believe me, it does sometimes too. That's why, we have a CPA, attorneys, et cetera, that help us because you're right. Sometimes it comes out with crazy
and
answers.
we'll never be able to account for that unless
Yeah.
the AI becomes as sentient as like I don't want to get into that realm. I'll stop after this, but if it gets as sentient as like us, then maybe yeah, it could pull the brakes. But it's not there, and I don't think it'll be there anytime soon. It's really hard to replicate human thought, right?
It's called a thing called AGI, general artificial general intelligence, and some people say it's going to happen in 25. Some people say it's for sure going to happen by 2030. Whenever it is, I don't know when it is, but it's expected to happen. And yeah, you're right. When a machine you're talking to is smarter than you are, it's a little scary. But right now, like as an example, with your name, you have a big enough name. If I wanted to, I could put in act like Deval Patel, give me solutions to my marketing problem. It will pull out the information from your brain that's out there on the internet, by the way. So it to a certain extent can act as smart as you or as Einstein or this guy Whizzer White, who we do a bunch of stuff with, who is the Supreme Court Rhodes Scholar. Anyway, there's a lot of things that can happen that you don't realize as far as artificial intelligence goes. Again, who knows what's going to happen in the future? That's the fun part of it all.
Well, here's a thought experiment. Think about like a kid who's 18 right now and just creates a brand purely off AI, and his name is let's call him Joe Schmo, right? And Joe Schmo becomes the top marketer in the world, and then you prompt AI to write as Joe Schmo. It's just replicating itself. And what is that? It's just the whole human experience brain trust that AI had pulled from. So at a
That's
certain
totally
point, I think the fear is where's creativity? People are going to write less. Like even me, I used to write from scratch. Now I'm using ChatGPT to write a blog article, right? Like where's it going to pull from if it's not pulling from humans?
Oh, I know. Plus, it's going to be pulling. Think about this. It's going to be pulling from other artificial intelligence models, which sometimes are wrong. So it's going to be pulling, let's say, 15% wrong. It's going to be pulling 15% of the data is going to be wrong, and then that percentage of data is going to go up. By the way, it's going to be wrong more and more. So just think about that. That's kind of scary. Some of that data is going to be wrong. Hey, there aren't. But what I would say is artificial intelligence, generally speaking, is the worst it's ever going to be. It's going to improve, but there are going to be components that people have to look out for. Hence the reason, hopefully, in some cases, that there is the need for humans.
Yeah, I mean, I think a certain percent of the population in any trade still needs to create, right?
Yep, totally,
Um,
totally.
wow, this really goes by fast. I feel like you're just having a conversation with a friend when you're doing this usually.
Yeah.
Um, what better way to kick off the new year with almost a 30-minute podcast? But um, some final thoughts. And let's keep this as broad as possible for
Okay.
business owners, for um, just people who work full-time jobs, or maybe even the guy who's working at a department store who wants something better for himself. What are some tips you could give to the younger generation, even younger than me? Because I always come to you when I have a finance question or I'm like looking to innovate in some way or I'm in a rut. Like some broad, maybe like 5 tips for
Yeah,
people.
I got a couple tips. So I do this thing called Diary of a Failed Entrepreneur because I could have been a big time big hitter like you, but I didn't
Did
because
you
I
hear
ended
that,
up.
by the way? I just asked that, and then my Siri said, knowledge is good.
Are you serious?
Yeah, talking about AI.
Yeah, yeah, I get you. I get you. What I was gonna say is, Diary of a Failed Entrepreneur. I put it together because I feel as though I could have been just a big time dude, and I've seen all the mistakes I've done over the years, and I'm gonna outline a couple. Number one, I eschewed completely eschewed marketing, meaning I turned the other way. So what I would say is I would definitely, if I was a small business owner starting all over again, which I feel like I am basically every day, I would say I would definitely get involved in marketing. Number one. Number two, hire a good marketer because that will help so much more. Because I've been doing everything basically bootstrapping on my own, etc. I would bring in a marketer because That's the most important part of a business. If you have a great whatever widget, but you're not out there marketing with a loudspeaker, you're going to end up nowhere. So I guess that's another way of saying, hey, get a hold of Duvall, by the way. But um,
It's
you
not
should
about
like
me, it's
that.
about you.
Um, I would also say, what I would also say is spend more than the time that you expect on one thing, and that's R and D. You have to have a good you have to have a good widget. So there's marketing and there's good widget. So R&D and marketing, those are the two things I would without a doubt spend money and time on, because
So,
that will
so
help you.
if I'm
Oh,
trying
go
to
ahead.
bring this down to a broad aspect, say it's someone who doesn't even have their own business, doesn't even kind of have the opportunity to have R&D. If we bring it down to the base level, it's like maybe get online and create a community, or start a conversation, go to networking events. In the R&D, start using ChatGPT. That's like a first step, right?
Totally. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, because I mean, how do you know if something's going to succeed unless you talk to your family, your friends, et cetera, et cetera? Because who knows if they love the idea, hey, you're good to go, right? That's the
Yeah.
first step, right? I'm not saying go out and bring in a bunch of a group to spend money and time on doing some huge scientific R&D project. Start off small, but I would just say make sure you have a good widget or a good service, and then also augment that with the marketing, because you'll be so much better off. Those are the two things that I think are really important with business. And then a third thing, don't be afraid to fail. I would say, my son's a baseball player, and and he's always, sometimes the kids will be afraid to fail. They'll be afraid to strike out. Dude, whatever. Who cares? If if you fail, well, you're probably going to be that much more apt to succeed in the next endeavor. So, those are three things I would say are really, really important. Marketing, R&D, and don't be afraid to fail. And I found in my, diary of a failed entrepreneur, those are the things that resonated with people. When I usually mention that to them, they understand.
Yeah. And I think what really spurred me on to start podcasting too is I think there's a lot of bad actors in the podcast space, and there's a lot of good actors, and there's a lot of people in between, right? And I'm not, like I said, my intent is not to be political on this podcast. It's not to cast aspersions at people. It's to like unite, kind of. And I know that's a broad like endeavor, and it's really hard. But I think small steps. If there's more people talking and podcasting and having a good cheery outlook, then that's good. But I think specifically, I'm like an elder millennial, but I see a lot of, and I graduated in sorry 2008 when we had the Great Recession. I was a poli sci major. I There was no job prospects. I went to law school. I hated it. I dropped out. I was in tons of debt. Got my first job in Seattle making 30,000 a year. I had to figure it out really quick. Which is why I got into marketing, started um my own agency, right? And I look at people now and I think there's no empathy. I think it's like, oh, Gen Z is lazy, blah blah blah. If I were to recreate that in this era, impossible, right? There's too much market penetration into marketing. There's too many marketers out there. It's just not possible. I just don't know what other field there is right now for people to get into besides AI, which is slowly like getting eaten up by the big guys, where they could just find a way out. And I think I'm not going to answer that question today. I'm not going to answer it tomorrow, but I think by having people like you and my other guests, maybe there is something that people can take away and learn from one of you, one of my guests, that can help them, right?
Yeah, it's going to be unique. We're in interesting, you know, there's a couple ways to look at it. It's, the battle's never been more fierce to succeed, but then again, it's easier to take the first step than ever because of all this technology that's out there. But what I would say is, well, what are you going to do? Just not try? If someone wants to try, hey, give it your darndest, and it is a frightening time, but and it's kind of, again, I mean, you got to take the step. You got to have the gumption to get out there and try to succeed. Otherwise, the very opposite will happen to you, just like you've done. I mean, 2008, that wasn't a very fun time. A lot of people, sulked in their bed, sulked on their couch, and
Oh,
you
I did all
obviously have
that
succeeded.
before I got an
Oh, whatever,
opportunity to
you've
get out of that.
succeeded.
Yeah. I did all that, in moderation, but I think it's
Hmm.
necessary. But Thanks for being here. I think a lot of people would find value from you, and something I just thought of. You talk to a lot of business leaders, mentors, people within your space. I think it would be valuable for also you to speak to like younger people who don't even know what they want to do, which is why I wanted to bring you on, and this is like an opportunity to do that. Do you want to throw out your website and your
Sure.
name and email?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, sure. Our website is vastsolutionsgroup.com. Again, vastsolutionsgroup.com. Best way to email us is info@vastsolutionsgroup.com. Now, you mentioned something kind of in line with something I mentioned. For the younger people, we do have it's a 100% free community. There's so much information and resources that are thrown in there that it's unbelievable. Someone just starting, someone who's thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, there's a lot of courses, a lot of information there that would help someone. Number one, number two. Remember, I did mention, the Vast Vault, because meaning we have, it's $199 a month. That might be a little steep for someone who's just starting out. But what I would say is, there's a unbelievable amount of resources and content that's in that community. But what I would say is, for someone who's just brand new starting out, we have something free. For someone who's a little bit, one step higher, $199 a month, deductible, by the way. And then, of course, we have personalized services as well. But what I would, in closing, I'm going to ask you one thing real quickly. What's next? And what's going to happen in 5 years to your podcast? Because I think it's going to blow up. I know your personality. I know people you know. What's your goal in 5 years based on this podcast?
I had to have more guests like you, and I think
Hmm.
the podcasts I like aren't selling products. They have to, I guess, at a certain point because you need a revenue model. But they're inspiring. They're giving solutions.
Mm-hmm.
There's a guy named Scott Galloway I really like. My buddy Curtis introduced me to him,
Mm-hmm.
and I think he is talking to Gen Z and a lot of the people who are down and out on their luck. They could be millennials, boomers, or Gen X. I don't know if boomer is like a derogatory phrase, but I said it. Um, but he inspires, and I think that's the goal. And it should be right. I think podcast is a great way to make tons of money. I didn't even think about that because I don't even. It's a very competitive space. I just think if there's conversations and people are hearing what I'm hearing from all my mentors and the people I've been blessed to meet in my life, then the future is a lot brighter, right? And it goes back to the old cliche, like you are a product of the five people you're closest to, right? And I it's never been more true. I used to hang out with not a seedy crowd, but just like an uninspired crowd. And they're great people. But when I started hanging out with people who are more intentional and like me, life got better, right? And there's always someone I can reach out to if I need to. And I don't think that's true for a lot of people, right? And I think people need to cultivate that.
Yeah, I'm
So
excited to
that's
see
my
what
goal.
happens.
Community. Yeah.
It's going to be something big. I know it's going to be something big.
Thanks. What do you think of the setup? Yeah.
I, I like it. I like it. Shows you're a basketball guy, universe. You know how I'm into the universe, astrophysics. I love.
Yeah.
I like you. You got some cool stuff going on. Shows you're a little bit. You got the LA deal going on.
Yeah. Cool. Hopefully everybody, listens. But thanks for being on.
You bet. It's a total pleasure. I know it's going to be great, and you're going to see a lot of benefits. Your viewers and listeners are going to see huge benefits for themselves because I know some of the content you're already going to be going over. You've already mentioned it. I know it's going to be a big deal for a lot of people. You're going to change some lives.
Thanks, Kenner. I'll have you on again. All
Love it. There you
right.
go.
Bye, guys.